welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, where all things football are injected right to your veins, with your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
Semper Fi. We are joined today by an awesome guest. What is up, and welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Spotlight Series. We have another exciting day where we're going to talk about a team that's in the news a lot of interesting things going on with the New Orleans Saints every day. I listen to this guy talk about the New Orleans Saints with the Cajun Cannon. Very excited to have him on. Christian, I think a lot of people maybe from around that don't necessarily follow the Saints. Maybe they haven't had an upfront seat to kind of listen and watch and see, the big shoes that you've filled in your role, where the Buddy D's and all these guys in the world. But really excited to have you on. Can you take just a second and let everybody know how they could tune in and find your work?
Sure. Yeah, pleasure to be on the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Christian Garrick with a K. And then you tune in WWL radio, terrestrial radio on 870 AM, 105.3 FM, and also radio.com. And you can also listen to WWL.com if you want to hear the show, me and the Cajun Cannon, Bobby Hebert, Sports Talk, weekdays 4 to 8 p.m.
Very cool. So I'm doing, 32 of these. I've got, every team. We've got about a quarter of the league that we've already done so far. Did some work on the Dolphins and the Texans last night. Obviously, quarterbacks, being a big issue for most of those guys, and we're going to certainly get into that with the New Orleans Saints. But I wanted to start off with a Semper Fi. That's, just an homage to you. You obviously start off every show that way, and you served in the military. So really appreciate your service to the country.
It was my pleasure. I'm rocking the Marines. I'm rocking the Marines logo on right now. I'm pretty proud of that. Proud of just service in general. No matter the branch, Army, Navy, Air Force. My father was in the Army, career Army officer. My grandfather served in the Army in World War II. He actually lied about his age and went overseas. I think he was 16 when he was overseas. I can't imagine being on battlefields at 16 years old. I know I wasn't capable and ready for that at that age. But, yeah, it's an important thing for me. But thanks for your appreciation.
Absolutely. My grandpa served in World War II as well, fought over there in Italy, and same story. He lied about his age to get over there because he loved his country, and I think that we owe a enormous debt of gratitude to those that served, just like yourself. And I want to start with that because you come from a family, and I was reading up a little bit. I know you call yourself an Army brat. You were kind of all around, not only the country, but all around the world growing up. What was your fandom like? I guess growing up, were you attached to certain teams? Was it more certain players?
Make no mistake about it, I was a Saints fan growing up. Both my parents are from New Orleans, born and raised. So, they taught me young at an early age, hey, this is the team we pull for. There's no other team. I grew up a Saints fan. I always liked LSU baseball. I had always dreamed of playing LSU baseball, but I'm a short, fat guy, so it's hard to do when you're short. It's a game for tall guys. Nonetheless, I've always grew up everything New Orleans. Even when my dad was stationed in Kentucky or wherever, New York, we would fly home frequently, and in fact, go to a couple of Saints games. And my very first Saints game as a kid was 1987, December 23rd. It was against the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was, at the time, ended up being the largest comeback in Saints history. They were down 24-3 to Boomer Esiason and the Cincinnati Bengals at halftime, and then Bobby Hebert actually got injured in that game, and Dave Wilson, the backup, engineered the largest comeback at that time in the team's history, and they ended up winning 44-24. It was an amazing second half. I remember it because there was snow flurries. I mean, it was cool as heck being at the time. I think it was Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati. We were stationed at Fort Knox. It was about a 4-hour drive to Cincinnati. So me and my dad hopped in the truck. We went over there, watched the game, and but we would frequently go to Saints games. In fact, my junior year, we were at Fort Knox, and we were scheduled to come home for the opener. I can't remember who they were going to open that season with, so that was the Sunday, the first Sunday in September, I think. Well, Thursday night of that week, I started feeling bad, and my stomach was killing me. Come to find out, I was having an appendicitis attack. So I had my appendix removed that Friday, so we didn't end up making the trip. So I was disappointed about that. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of rambling here, but yeah, we would pay. Remember the NFL Sunday ticket when it first started? I mean, we were on board with that from the very beginning. And actually, my dad used to sneak me in at West Point, New York. There was a sports bar about an hour outside of base that he would drive to, we would go to, and it's a bar, and at I think I was probably 13, 14 at the time. The owner was trying to enforce the law, rightfully so, saying, hey, he can't come in, he's underage. And my dad, I don't know how he talked him into it, but they ended up letting me go in there. I remember it's called the Sports View. I don't know if it's still there. I heard it's still there, but nonetheless, yeah, we used to drive an hour to go watch the Saints when we were living in New York.
Yeah, no, that's not relevant at all. That's exactly what I want to hear. So you grew up a Saints fan, paid attention to the Saints, a lot of history with the team. But then you took another step, I guess, that most Houdat fans don't take, and you began to want to pursue working with the team, and through WWL, and I know you started off on the sidelines. And I believe that was during Hokie Gaijan was there. Is that right? I went to school with his daughters and knew Hokie a little bit. So I believe you were there with him, right?
Yeah. Well, so I didn't start on the sidelines. I actually started at WWL as a producer, as the morning show producer. I don't know if you remember Bob Del Giorno, but Bob Del Giorno, our former morning host. And then, I'd always, I was the guy that early on in my career that, I was always there, even when I wasn't getting paid sometimes. I was the one, hey, so-and-so's sick. Can you come in? Yeah, I'll come in. So anyway, I got an opportunity, a great opportunity. I'm so thankful for that opportunity in 2009 when my boss made me the Saints sideline reporter, and we all know what happened that year in 2009. The Saints would go on to win the Super Bowl that season. So it was a great start. And I'll tell you a little story after that season, after the Saints had won the Super Bowl. And this was probably, about 4 months after. Jim Henderson calls me, and we're chatting, catching up, and I think it was around minicamp that year, and him and Hokie, we're all watching practice together, minicamp practice, and they both said, now, don't get used to that. Okay, last year that's not how it goes every year, But it was really neat. It was a big thrill. I got tons of stories about that Super Bowl that I'll share with you if you want, or they'll go in a book one day.
Yeah, no, that's great. I certainly, I'd love to hear that. But I know one of the things that obviously we want to talk about is because we want to get into some of the offseason stuff. And 2006 started a brand new era for the New Orleans Saints. You talked about growing up a Saints fan, and going back to the Tulane days, and you mentioned Bobby Hebert. I'll never forget Bobby Hebert coming in when I was like 7 years old to Covenant Country Club, and he came in there for lunch one day after and just he just a magnanimous personality, just the kind of guy you don't forget meeting, and I know you get to work with him every day, which is awesome.
Well, I'll go back a step further. So I told you that we would come in town quite a bit when my dad was on leave from the Army, and I think my grandmother passed away, and we'd come into New Orleans, and I made my dad take me to the David Drive practice facility. Right, I was probably, this was in '87, so I was 9 at the time, and over there on David Drive, you could peek through the vines on the fence and watch practice. Security wasn't nearly as tight as it is today, and so we watched practice. We thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then they didn't have a gated place where the players parked their cars, so you literally had access right up. They'd come right out of the locker room, right to their car, so you could hang out in the parking lot and flag them down. And so Sam Mills, Pat Swilling, Morton Anderson, Dalton Hilliard, and I was picking all these guys off. And so my dad was like, all right, hey, look, it's getting late, time to go. And I was like, no, I'm not going until I see Bobby, till I meet Bobby. So I had, several football cards of Bobby Hebert's. And excuse me. So I waited, my dad was trying to get me to go, and I was like, I'm not leaving. So finally Bobby comes hobbling out of the locker room. He's pretty banged up. He has his stack of VCR tapes. Remember VCR?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he had the VCR tapes. And he's, I went up to him and asked him for his autograph, and he was as nice as can be. What you see out of Bobby is really who he is.
Yeah.
That's just who he is. He's as friendly as can be. So he signed the autographs. He was so cool. He opened. My dad was there, and he gets in his car, and he says, "Hey, come sit on the other side." And so I was sitting in the passenger seat, and me and Bobby talked for like 20 minutes. Here I am, a 9-year-old kid, and he could have long since said goodbye and said, "Hey, I got to go." But that's who Bobby is in a nutshell. Just how nice he is, but also he doesn't know how to say no sometimes. He doesn't know when to go. All right, hey, I have to be somewhere. But he's one of the most genuine individuals on the planet. And anybody that doesn't like Bobby is there's something wrong with them. They're not a good human as far as I'm concerned, because there's a lot to like about Bobby. And I know some Saints fans are still sore the fact that he went to Atlanta, played for the Falcons.
Yep.
But, I think if we all asked ourselves the question of, hey, if the current employer that I'm with doesn't want to pay me anymore, well, I'm not going to quit doing that job. I'm just going to go find another employer that'll pay me. So I got big love for Bobby. There's several times where, I harken back and look at that day and go, man, I never thought I would be sharing a radio show with my boyhood idol.
Right.
It's pretty neat.
It is really neat. And, the last 14, 15 years have been really exciting for Saints fans and for the Saints organization, and I'm sure for your show. So let's talk a little bit about the Drew Brees era. And I guess I'll start the question like this. I guess if this is the end, can you put into perspective with Saints fans and the Saints organization what he's meant the last 14, 15 years?
He's meant everything. I mean, look what he's done in New Orleans. Look what he's done for New Orleans, both off the field and on. I think that, some Saints fans that are ungrateful, that are ushering him out the door, they don't remember the days of Billy Joe Tolliver, Billy Joe Hobart, Danny Werfel. They don't remember those days, the Ditka years. He was the first franchise quarterback this team has ever had. And I say that's not disrespectful to Archie Manning, but Archie, Archie didn't have enough tools around him. So, he's been special. And I hope that Saints fans, I know that Saints fans are going to grow to appreciate just how good he was, because we're about to experience life after Drew Brees, I think. And if you ask me, if I'm being honest, it's one that is tepid waters. We don't know. We don't know. We'd like to think that Taysom Hill is going to be good. We'd like to think that maybe Jameis Winston can resurrect his career. But to think that you're going to have a quarterback that gets to Drew's level immediately after he retires it's really difficult. I mean, the Packers have done it. They were very fortunate from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. The 49ers were very fortunate with Joe Montana and Steve Young, but those are very, very isolated cases where that stuff can happen. So I don't see it happening here. I hope it does. I hope Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston ends up being phenomenal. I just know how hard that position is to play, and I think that when Drew does indeed call it a career, I think that fans that were rushing him out the door are going to be longing for the days of his return.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. But so let me ask you, the fact that he is taking a little bit of time, and obviously take all the time that you need. I mean, that's just he's done enough for the organization and all that nobody should be rushing him. But does the fact that he's taking a little time tell you that there is at least some sort of percentage chance that he comes back and is under center week 1 next year?
Well, there's always a chance, right? I mean, but if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say about 90% chance he retires. I think a couple things factor in here. last year he didn't have the job at NBC waiting on him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point he's going to look at, I've missed 9 games over the last 2 years due to injuries. Does he really want to rehab again? That gets old on players. It's not so much about their skill set diminishing. They just get tired of getting beat up. Look at Andrew Luck. He retired because he was tired of getting beat up, not because he couldn't play, and he's young.
Right.
Excuse me. I'm dealing with a little bit of a allergy stuff. I actually went and got tested yesterday. It was negative, thankfully, but just bothered by allergies. So, I just think that's a factor when you start having the conversation about he's in his 40s, he's had injuries in back-to-back years. Plus, man, when you're an NBC studio analyst, you work 1 day a week. It's a lot of time to spend with your kids, and I know being a father is very, very important to Drew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of those pictures of him and Tom Brady after the game, with his kids, and I loved the little girl who just couldn't be bothered with the fact that Brady was right there just doing cartwheels on the field. That was that was just fantastic. But let's talk about life after Drew Brees then, because it's not just, hey, Drew is gone and okay, let's go pick out a new quarterback. There's a lot of other things to consider here, and one of them being obviously the cap. Now, Mickey Loomis, maybe more than anybody, seems to be a wizard at dealing with the cap, but he's really got his work cut out for him this year, being about $100 million over the cap projected.
$112 million projected to be over the cap. Look, this Saints team and this organization is already starting to look different. When you talk about the assistant coaches that have now gone on to be head coaches, the front office looks different without Terry Fontenot now in Atlanta. This roster is going to look significantly different next year. Being that far over the cap, they're going to have to say goodbye to some good players and some players they don't want to say goodbye to. You're going to have a roster that's going to have a couple of stars on it, some really young players, drafted players, undrafted free agents, and that middle of the road experienced veteran that's pricey. I don't know that's going to be affordable for them. So you're not going to have depth. And if you know anything about the National Football League, in order to make it to the playoffs and beyond and into the Super Bowl, you got to have really good depth. And a lot of it, the Saints have had that for the last 4 years. They've won more games than anybody in the National Football League over that span in the regular season. But I just think this roster is going to look drastically different. We get calls every day, trade Mike Thomas. Well, you got to understand the economics of it. You're going to eat dead money. You're going to eat some money on that. And it's always about what I try to explain to fans is when you're looking to move somebody, whether it's trading them or cutting them, you got to weigh the dead money versus the cap savings. If the cap savings is higher than the dead money, then that's the time to do it. For example, Jared Cook, you're going to eat about $2 million. You would save $9 million if you cut him. So that's an obvious one that you look at and say, they're probably going to release. If they can move them in a trade, they will, but I don't think there's going to be much of a market for Jared Cook. They're gonna have their work cut out for them. Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley are salary cap wizards, as you mentioned. They can restructure some contracts, kick the can down the road when the cap is projected to be better in 2022 and 2023. But they got to face reality this year. So I think, if I'm being completely honest with you and the listeners, I think that you might have a lean year or two before you can retool that roster the way it was the past 4 years.
I want to come right back to the you mentioned the coaching staff, but just to stick on quarterback for just a second, just a two-part question. If you had to say who you thought the Saints quarterback was going to be next year, who would it be? And with your finger on the pulse of the Who Dat Nation, who do you think they would want the quarterback to be next year?
It's mixed. I mean, some want Jameis, some want Taysom. I think they both have some good upside, and they also have some downside. I think Taysom Hill holds the ball too much. He was sacked 13 times in 4 games. 13 in 4 games. And that was behind an offensive line that's very good. That's a very good offensive line he was playing behind. So he holds the ball a little bit too much. That interception against Chicago in the playoffs, not interception, that fumble, that was because he didn't throw with anticipation. Jameis Winston comes with a history. He threw for 5,000 yards, but he also threw 30 interceptions and 33 touchdowns. You'd like to see that number go down. You would think that under Sean Payton's system, it probably would. because it's a different system. The old Bruce Arians adage of no risk it, no biscuit. That's not the case here in New Orleans with this offense. And Sean Payton is masterful at designing offenses around players' strengths. What do they do well?
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that all the time, he's really good at doing that. If they're not strong at something, he's not going to ask them to do it. So I think that's the key to most. Well, that's the key to life, to be honest with you.
Right.
Play to your strengths, and then try to marginalize or hide your weaknesses and play to your strengths as much as possible. So to answer your question, I think it's going to be an open competition. I wouldn't be surprised if they're sitting there at 28 and a quarterback in college, maybe Mac Jones, is floating around at 21, 22. I think that would be intriguing, and I think that might entice them to move up. I think if they do move up in the draft in the first round in particular, they're targeting a quarterback.
Well, my co-host normally is on with me would love that. He's an Alabama fan, loves Mac Jones, thinks Mac Jones is actually even a better thrower than Tua was. I guess all that's yet to be seen. Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, he is. I do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, they're in the 20s, so yeah, certainly the draft would be a possibility. Is Jameis Winston realistic? Because with the cap situation, can we even afford to bring him back if somebody like Denver or Chicago or somebody like that goes after him hard?
Well, I think what you have to watch for, honestly, the team to watch for is the Detroit Lions, who they just hired as their head coach, Dan Campbell, right?
Right.
Right here off the Saints staff, and then there's some familiarity there. All of a sudden, he shows up, and they're willing to part ways with Matt Ryan. So that tells you, I think, a little bit that he feels like he can find his quarterback cheaper and younger. Jameis is younger, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a play for Jameis Winston. One that they know the Saints don't have a lot of money, so they don't have to jack that salary up too high. But I think the price tag, the sweet spot for the Saints, is if his base salary, I'm talking about Jameis Winston's right around $8 to $10 million a year, I think that's about the right price. But Detroit comes in and wants to offer him 12, 13 a year. I think it's hard for the Saints to justify that, and that's why I think they very well could end up drafting a quarterback, regardless of Jameis Winston signs, because you're not going to commit to him long term. It might be a 2-year deal, and then quarterbacks are going to, if he plays well, he can go back to them and say, hey, I want to redo this deal. It might be as long as a 3-year deal. They're not going 4 or 5 years with him. And that's why I still think that, like I said, they're going to draft a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it is a guy like Mac Jones, and if you don't feel like he's ready day one, I mean, I guess you are going to still have Taysom Hill. If you needed a stopgap, if nothing else, he could certainly be that. I know Sean Payton has been very I don't know, aggressive maybe over the last couple of years and talking about Hill. He's compared him to Steve Young at times that I've seen, which is obviously, pretty high, maybe.
That raised some eyebrows.
Yeah. And so he must see something there. And we know that he's a good evaluator. We know he knows what he's talking about when it comes to quarterbacks. What was the decision this year to go with Hill instead of Winston when Brees went down? What do you think, I guess, was going on behind the scenes with that?
Well, some people are speculating that he did that intentionally to keep Jameis Winston's value down. That couldn't be anything further from the truth. You don't do that at the risk of what's best for your football team. And what was best for the football team, they felt like, is Taysom Hill being quarterback. And I think some of that had to do with the fact that Jameis was still unfamiliar with the offense. There was no real training camp. There was no real preseason games. So I think they trusted Taysom Hill a little bit more, having been familiar with the system. And I think they wanted to see, hey, let's find out if Taysom is the eventual successor. You can look at Jameis because he's got years on tape, right? So you can look at some of the things and get a good idea about him as your starter. And then you got to do the same thing with Taysom, and then the opportunity presented itself. I think that's all what went into it.
I know you mentioned that you're not really a fantasy football guy, and that's a lot of our listeners are more in the fantasy football and like particularly the Dynasty fantasy football.
You know why? Because I can never remember to set my doggone lineup. And I like it. I think it's great for the sport. I've played it, but I'm not qualified to sit here and say, "Yo, start him, sit him, go grab him." I'm just that's not where my cup of tea is, or that's not where my forte is.
Yeah, but you know the Saints. So I guess let me ask you this. I know during that time where Taysom Hill was the starter, there was a lot of hand wringing over Alvin Kamara's usage, and he wasn't catching as many passes. Obviously, Kamara had a great year, but some of his stats dipped with Taysom Hill. Do you think that was part of the game plan? I know he was a little bit banged up during that time as well. And if Taysom Hill does become the starter, do you think Alvin Kamara is still set up to be kind of the guy that the Saints would lean on in that situation?
I would invite fans to look at each game with the Saints, no matter who's the quarterback, is a different game plan, and Alvin Kamara can be used as a decoy. Taysom Hill presents things that Drew doesn't in the running game, and his touches went down. Kamara, I'm talking about, because when you run your quarterback, traditionally when you turn around and hand the ball off, you're playing basically 11 on 10. But when you're playing, when you run your quarterback on a design sweep or bootleg or whatever, you're now 11 on 11. So I think that was attractive to the Saints in that regard, just over that span. And you got to remember, Alvin Kamara was banged up last year. So the idea was, hey, let's try to keep him fresh for the postseason as well. Let's not wear him down a whole heck of a lot. Early in the season, remember, he was getting a lot of touches. So I just think that, they're mindful of that. But they also, one of the things about Sean Payton and this organization, what they've been very good about over the time is being able to identify each game is going to take on a life of its own. And there's no set way of, hey, this is how we're going to have to do it. They're pretty fluid in their adjustments. Now they know certain things about, hey, if we do this, we have a good chance of winning. If this happens, we have a good chance of winning, etc. So I think that that's what they've been very good at. But as far as Alvin Kamara's touches in the future, I think he just signed a big contract prior to the season, so he's very much in the plans.
Yeah, absolutely. What about a wide receiver? Obviously, you mentioned fans being a little frustrated with Michael Thomas. I think some of that maybe goes back to, maybe some of his social media posts, things like that. Man, we live in such a different world right now where some of that stuff comes out. And, I'm not sure some of the athletes of old we would have liked either had we been able to read their thoughts kind of on constant loop. He's gotten a lot of flack for that, but I mean, battled through a lot of injuries this year and showed a lot of toughness. What do you? I mean, like you said, I don't think Michael Thomas is going anywhere. Do you think he gets a chance to bounce back and have another great season next year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, I think, pros to keeping Mike Thomas is that if you're introducing a new quarterback, well, doesn't that quarterback get better with Mike Thomas on the field? I mean, it's an easier transition. It's not like you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers or Drew comes back where he can function without Mike Thomas. Ideally, you want to have Mike Thomas on the field no matter who the quarterback is, but he makes that transition to a new quarterback a lot easier, and he's a security blanket of sorts. So aside from the price tag that we talked about earlier of moving him, I think Mike Thomas is in for a good rebound next year. He's going to have off-season surgery. On two different off-season surgeries. So I think he rehabs that well. If he rehabs that well, I think he's going to be in for a big year.
Is Jared Cook a Saint next year?
No.
No,
it's too easy. Do the math. Again, his base salary is $11 million. They save $9 million and they eat $2 million. It's basic economics. That's salary cap 101. Anytime the savings is higher than the dead money, then you go ahead and make that move, or you ask them to restructure, which I don't think they're going to do either. I think they signed Jared Cook on a 3-year deal with the intention to probably move on from him after year 2. I think he wasn't on the same page at times with Drew this year, which was a little baffling. They drafted Adam Troutman. So when they start drafting guys that are younger than you at the same position, it's telling you, hey, they're going to be moving on soon.
Have you heard much praise for Troutman? He came on a little bit at the end of the year, and if in an expanded role, do you think he could really produce for us?
Yeah, I do. He's going to get some opportunities. But, he was a quarterback in high school, so the tight end position is still relatively new to him. He played at Dayton, too. I mean, hats off to him for being able to make that transition from Dayton all the way to the National Football League. I think the Saints have hit on Adam Troutman. It's just, you remember Jimmy Graham wasn't an instant superstar in 2010 when they drafted him. He didn't really emerge until the 2011, 2012 season.
Yeah, no, and that's the tight end position certainly seems to take a little bit of time to, start producing a lot of numbers in the passing game, things like that. It's a lot to learn. You got to be able to block a defensive end and get separation from a DB. That's not exactly easy to do, both those things. So I really appreciate you coming on with me. It's been a blast. I know we're right at the 30-minute mark. I can't say enough about just my appreciation for you taking your time, talking Saints with me. Look forward to listening to your show. Anything else you want to plug or tell anybody before you go?
No, I mean, look, just want to thank the men and women that serve this country. That's pretty much it. And I'm glad you invited me on your show. I'm honored to do that. I'm really humbled when anybody ever really reaches out to me and wants me to share my opinion on the Saints in particular. Sports in general, just because I still can't believe I get paid to do this. So it's pretty amazing.
Well, for Christian, for the Dynasty Vipers, for Matt, my normal co-host, I know you said you got your military shirt. I got my Steve Gleason shirt on, jersey on. So
hey, that's the best one.
Yeah, that's right.
Well.
And so with that, we're gone.
All right, take care.